Hello YouTubers, Joe Kersey here on Palm Sunday, April 13th, 2014. It's about 77 degrees and it's at noon Eastern Daylight Time. You might say, Joe, why aren't you in church? Well, Joe was in church here. He went to the 8 o'clock service, which is unusual for me because usually on Palm Sunday and Easter I've always gone to the 10:30 service because I like all the big deal and the big music and the processing and the smells and the bells and everything. But I decided to do a little bit more lower key, have a little bit more lower key involvement this year. Now you can't hear it, but I'm going to tell you about it. Right now, I am rejoicing because I'm hearing for the first time the spring peepers. Now the spring peepers only come out when it's over 72 degrees. And it hasn't been 72 degrees up here in this particular spot until just today. So I'm rejoicing about the spring peepers. But since it's quite windy, and ultimately you won't be able to hear me, I'm going to go inside here while we talk about some more serious matters. It drops in from 77 to 68, which is a very useful feature to have in the summertime. But in these sort of little transitional periods, well, sorry, the spring transitional period, having the house stay cool isn't necessarily all that good, but it's very useful, you know, once you get that thermal mass effect, to have the house stay warm in the, you know, well into late fall. So take the good with the bad. Well, it's neither, I wouldn't characterize any of it as bad. So we had about 25, 28 at 8 o'clock today. You know, it's a nice service. It's, you know, it's quiet. You don't have, you know, kids banging around and although there's a lot less of that with this particular group of kids we have now than there had been here in years, you know, previous years. And I love music probably more than the next guy, but I like singable music. Well, I've sort of covered that in earlier videos. Although, you know, All Glory, Laud, and Honor is sort of the one that's sung every year, and I miss seeing that, and I missed singing that, and they were going to sing O Sacred Head Sore Wounded for the sequence hymn, and I love to sing that. Still, well, I'll also confess my dirty secret. My dirty secret is I wanted to watch the end of the Masters here today on the internet. I know, that's shameful. Well, no, it's not. I went to church. That's not shameful. I worship God. You know, 19 years ago on Palm Sunday is when I started going to St. Peter's. And aside from, I think there were like 2 weeks I was sick, and then I was out of town. I think there were 5 or 6 weeks 5 or 6 Sundays I was out of town, but I managed to go to church on 4 of those. I've only missed going to church four times since in 19 years. For what that's worth. Well, it's worth it to me. Now, I imagine a Palm Sunday sermon is one of the more difficult sermons for a preacher to put forth. As near as I can figure out what Charles was trying to say today, I can't say he took particularly anything as a point of departure in the Matthew Gospel. I mean, of course, Matthew's one of the folks that quotes the Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me line. And that's a very desolate statement, isn't it? Very interestingly, a woman at church lent me a book here about 4 or 5 weeks ago now, and I read it, and I gave it back to her last week. I'm sorry about sticking my middle finger in my eye, but my eye itches here, guys. And this fella, and I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote it. I mean, that's shameful of me, I know, but I can't remember. But he's currently at Princeton Seminary or Princeton University Seminary, or which doesn't necessarily give you any sort of idea of what he's going to say. But no, he dealt very deeply with Christ's human nature and its ability to feel abandoned by God, and indeed its ability to also potentially, although in Christ's case he did not, abandon God. And this fellow's interpretation of Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani was that at that point the human nature of Christ had reached its very depths of absenting itself from the presence of God and at the same time feeling the absence of the presence of God. Which he said was necessary for Christ to truly sacrifice himself for the absolute, the most profound, absolute sinful place a human being can be is to willingly absent himself from God. And he said it was necessary for Christ to experience this to fully atone for the sins of sinful human beings. I thought that was not a bad way to explain it. I think Charles was grasping toward that in his sermon today. I can't say he succeeded, but he certainly didn't fail. So that was my Palm Sunday experience. We gathered in the Memorial Garden, our Columbarium Memorial Garden, out the side of the church, and then walked around front, went up the steps. And of course, for some of us, walking up the steps is a bit of a how should we say, orthopedic challenge. But it's good. It's always good to go on Palm. I think I may go to the 8 o'clock Easter thing next week. I've never done that before. It's always interesting to go to the Easter service, certainly at the 10:30 services, because you see, about 50 or 60 people you never see, but maybe once every 2 or 3 years. There was a period there where, particularly if Easter fell later in the spring, you'd have a number of these young women show up dressed what basically looked like jogging bras and night attire. I remember one memorable moment that a couple sat behind me, and I thought they were getting ready to go to the motel. This guy couldn't keep his hands off her, and they were, there's every now and again there's this little gasp, from the young woman involved. Maybe a little moan from the guy involved. I thought maybe are they shooting a soft porn movie here at the church during Easter? It's one of the more bizarre experiences I've had in church. Well, enough of this. I away here now to the Masters, as the CBS guys say breathlessly, the Masters. And now Paul's off Monday through Thursday of next week here, this coming week. So, he'll have his 4 days off, and good. That'll get him all squared away for next year. So he'll start the clock running on 2 weeks off during the year sometime next year. All right now. Bye-bye, YouTubers.